Barquet from Stockholm Environment Institute.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation, and it's great to see a lot of you I've met behind the screen. I almost didn't recognize some of you. Some of you are quite similar, so some of you are better live than in pictures, so great for you. Carina Barquet. I'm a senior researcher at SEI. I am working together with Sten and some of the other people here today and in the Social Growth Project. And I'll be talking a little bit about some work we've been doing. And I have to admit, largely inspired by Ecobarge and Morten's work, Victoria's work. Very often researchers want to inspire the world and inspire the private sector, but today we've been inspired by the private sector. So I'm really, really happy about that. How all of this started was with an idea that how come our devices have gone from single use to multifunction? I suspect most of us in this room are old enough to remember the very first mobile phones, and I suspect most of us are not using them anymore. I also suspect none of us are in dodgy businesses that require getting phones for single uses. In fact, we probably would not buy a mobile phone just for the sake of calling. We buy a mobile phone for everything else. And we want a device that delivers not just one function, but many functions. So why are we not thinking in the same way when it comes to space, when it comes to clearly our cities, but in this case, our seas, our ocean? And this is sort of what triggered some of the results I'm going to show you that my colleagues and myself at SEI have been working with. First of all, we wanted to, of course, some theory, understand what multifunctionality would mean, what it would entail. And we came down to that it could actually be a bridge between ecosystems, what we researchers in the environmental world are always talking about, and the artifacts or instruments, the innovations, the stuff that we want to use and play with. This could be a bridge between what the policymakers and decision makers and researchers around the world are trying to achieve and what we actually want to use, which is toys, basically. Multifunctionality, we find out, could happen at least in 3 ways: through co-using the same resource, for example, waves, wind, whatever. It could also happen through coexistence. It means using economic interactions to build your business model. It could also be about co-location, meaning setting up your infrastructure in spatial proximity so that it works and you can benefit from each other's structures. We then looked through what's happening in the research world. We were inspired by the private sector, but we wanted to know what's happening sort of beyond our little network. And we found out that there is quite a lot of things going on. In fact, as one of the combinations which is most common is infrastructure, multifunctional infrastructure for wind and wave. But it's also very common with wind and aquaculture, and etc. You see the different possible combinations. And some of these are actual real large-scale test beds, as you can see in the image next to it. Some of them are less large, but still running and technically fully possible. And some others are still at a concept stage. And while technically they might work, the business models are still being investigated. I delivered a similar presentation about 3 weeks ago, but the room was then full with policymakers, and then I was talking about the policy drivers for multifunctionality. And today, I believe this story is important for the private sector because you need to be on board if we are going to get the best and the most out of our seas. It is not an empty space, it is quite used, and it is quite polluted, so we need to make the most out of it. And for this, I believe you have a big role to play when it comes to market drivers. You need to convince people that you are able to cooperate with the environmental challenges that we have ahead of us as well. And for that, you need to identify social and economic benefits from co-use. Make your business case to the policymakers, talk to them. You need to have business models that enable multifunctionality to show that you can use less space, even the same space, and get more functions out of it. And lastly, you have a role to play in organizing small and large-scale actors. We don't want to build giants. We want an equitable blue economy, and you have a big role in ensuring this. If you get this, I believe we can achieve a lot. Multifunctionality can optimize the use of space, can deliver multiple benefits. It can be more efficient in the resource use, but it can also reduce your CapEx and share your OpEx with other companies. But we need to collaborate on this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.